No theme song today, ladies and gentlemen. None of that. We don't have the time. There's too much on our plate.
Oh, you could have had me start up singing ZZ Top. That
Oh,
could
we
have been
could
an option.
have. That's true.
It's too
Instead,
late
I
now.
just lied to everybody because I thought it was funny. It's Wednesday. It is an episode of the Mattriarchy. We are here with some of the regular guys. Hello, Fizz. I don't know if you're still out there, Colin. Colin said he's going to destroy the sun. I have a question about how you intend to do that. I'd like to know what your plan is for destroying the sun, but I would like to do that while I share a story. If you guys will all humor me.
He's gonna make a paper mache sun and then like set it on fire.
My youngest had to do a meteorology class for school. He needed science to fill it in for his major, and he chose meteorology because he thought it was going to be a snooze. That would be pretty easy. And so for the final discussion post thing, he had to answer some stock questions, and amongst those was the what do you think about the climate, right? And his answer was something along the lines of, I think it's a generally bad idea. and one of the other questions, the follow-up questions is, what do you intend to do about the climate? And he wrote, I'm going to destroy it with a big gun. Now, those weren't the actual answers. Those were the answers that he wrote in his paper to amuse himself while he was coming up with things to actually say. But he didn't remember to delete those off the document. And when he copied and pasted it into the online forum for the discussion post thing, that all got preserved. and he got it in right at the deadline, so it was locked in place. And so we're sitting here in the other room, and all of a sudden he says, "Oh no!" So then we're like, "Oh my goodness, what happened?" And he explained the story and brought out his computer so we could read his answers. And shockingly, nobody else replied with anything. He didn't get any points off from his teacher or anything for threatening to destroy the environment. So anyway, there you have it. So that's my story about Colin's story. Just made me laugh. Today, last week, we were talking about costumes, superhero costumes, theory of costuming, all this kind of fun stuff. And Cartoonicus said that, oh no, he had more things prepared to talk about that we skipped past. And this week, I have been out of my head. And I have not gotten anything else prepared for us to talk about. We didn't discuss reading material or anything else. We just didn't do it all. No. And that's on me. So I said, hey, do you want to bring out your slides and talk about Catwoman or whatever it was? And I thought we'd also, since many of us here, since many of us here are also comics creators, we thought we would maybe share some of our own costumes and designs that we've had a part in and why we felt those were cool and how they fit in with our personal philosophy. Plus, this week, Twitless is here. That way. There he is. Oh, yay! And so, rather than just have me talk about what I think Twitless's opinion on superhero costumes is, I'll actually ask.
What did you think my opinion was? Well, that's actually fascinating.
My memory, well, you haven't seen the show. That's fine. My memory in talking about this before is that you prefer classic superhero costumes, tights and capes and all of that accoutrement. That's the classic stuff. Whereas I have an affinity. I like the classic stuff too, but I also have an affinity and a fondness for the tactical look of some characters if it fits them really well. And so, what I led with was I said I believe that that my opinions encapsulate Twitless's, but I know he has different reasons for that. So I wanted you to go on and have some time.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, sure, yeah. No, you're right. Cartoonicus and I are very different in that respect.
And I think you and I actually probably fall closer to the same side from what I was describing last time, because one of the reasons I like it is because of the symbolism and signifier, like using them as tools.
That's a much deeper reason than probably my gut reaction is. my gut feeling is just I love superhero outfits because the genre itself is fantasy. It's not meant to be real, and it would be like taking medieval knights and dragons and saying, well, actually a lizard that big wouldn't be able to fly, so it just has to be a T-Rex. And that's fine. I'm sure you can have an excellent story with knights and T-Rexes. In fact, that's amazing, but it doesn't detract. It's still not a dragon, and the fact that the dragon is such a fantastic, awesome, cool character, and it's burned into our brains as something we constantly are attracted to. But it's fantasy, and so by reasons of a very poor analogy, I find the same thing with superheroes, and that's another thing that I think is why superheroes are particularly suited for the surreal environment that comics bring. And I think, Metal, you can identify with this as well with your love of manga, right? There are designs, there are characters, there are things you can do in manga and anime and also in superhero comics, and they just don't work very well the minute you try to make that into live action. And that's why I love...
Not without, like, really breaking the live action.
Yeah. There are some exceptions, like, for example, I know Tokusatsu does pretty well in live action.
Yeah.
But there are certain things that, just like I said, they just don't translate very well. And so that's one of the reasons why I love the superhero comic, because in the superhero comic, Superman and Wonder Woman, Batman, for example, Spider-Man, and then a host of other characters are very believable. You read over those characters' costumes and you just accept it. And when you try to sell that on the big screen, it often gets harder, which is why I think that early adaptations of the X-Men, for example, I don't know, it was just a design massacre. Like the first X-Men movies, they're all just wearing black leather. It's just basically a straight line from the Matrix films straight to obliterating all identity that those characters had. So the colorful, fantastical world of comics is what makes these the ability for these characters to come alive in ways that they couldn't otherwise. So big fan of superhero outfits. I was literally just thinking about this the other day when I was thinking about the fact that, to my knowledge, the MCU, and I don't have the hate boner for the MCU that everyone else has. Not everyone, that some people have, but I will say this: when I tried to think, I don't have the hate boner, but there is one thing that I was thinking about.
Well, they went through time and made it all. They went back in time and made it all suck.
But let me bring this up.
You realize when most people hate on the MCU, it is within the last 5 years of movies, right?
There are people who will retroactively hate it from the very beginning at this point.
Only if they're DC
Oh,
fanboys.
man.
But
like Iron Man is such a good film.
I kind of retroactively hate it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, that's a thing. But let me bring this up.
It was so bad. Endgame was so bad it made me hate things I loved.
Let me bring this up, though. Let me say this. So, regardless of how you feel about the MCU, one thing that I think has happened is I couldn't think of a female superhero that the MCU had done that didn't exist as a woman in a motorcycle gear / stunt woman gear. Like it was just a stunt jumpsuit, and they would have slightly different color schemes, but that's basically the default costume for every female character in the MCU. And the only one that it kind of works for is Black Widow, because she technically, that's just her standard outfit anyway. but every other female character I could think of was either wearing a motorcycle jumpsuit with slightly different color schemes, or they were wearing street clothes. And when you get to a character like Scarlet Witch, it's like she was supposed to be cooler than that.
No, she wasn't. Scarlet Witch's costume has never been good. It has always been like a dancing leotard with a weird crown thing.
I am okay with that. I love that look.
I know, but that looks stupid in 3 dimensions.
But
and it didn't even look great on paper. It just looked okay.
I disagree with that.
And that's
but I also think
when the first time they tried taking Scarlet Witch seriously, like after because they tried individuating her from Vision after they depersoned Vision and eliminated her children. The first time they tried taking her seriously, they just put her in a fortune teller's a gypsy fortune teller's costume, and that didn't work well. And then it was like every like practically, I'm going to hyperbolize. Every issue after that was brand new costume that was exactly the same as the last brand new costume.
The headgear is iconic. It's how I know that she is her.
Well, it's how she does it. It's how she needs to take extra time to cross the street. Look 3 ways before crossing the street.
You know, it doesn't have to be as big as her like 1960s. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is this: is that Vision, the MCU version of the Vision, got a cape and like a unique look. All of the male characters were able to have very interesting fashion designs for like who they were and how they took the comic book design and applied it. But for the women, it just got into completely bland. Like if the MCU announces they're going to come out with a new female superhero, I know exactly what the design is going to be. It's going to be a leather jumpsuit, and they're just going to slightly change the patterning.
Well, I mean, Marvel's got a real dearth of female characters to begin with. So, like, that's something to think on with that, too. But I'm trying to think about other female characters from the MCU that aren't, like, Mary Jane.
But I also think that part of the conversation has less to do with the designs from the comics and more to do with the fact that they're not going to put their actresses in sexy costumes because of modern sensibilities.
Well, okay, so that's another thing that also ties in with.
Before we get into that, I want to go back to what you're talking about the MCU, because I'm thinking, okay, you got the Guardians of the Galaxy characters, but those are all spacesuits, and so those are going to be fairly generic.
It's the same thing.
Right? That's how they're drawn in the comic too. They're all just like various spacey looking leotards with extra pockets on it and in just various colors. And that's like Gamora's is all plain, Mantis is very plain looking.
Star-Lord looks more interesting though. Again, the male characters get to
on with that. Yeah, sure. But I mean, when we talk about females, I'm trying to think even the comic book counterparts of those, the Captain Marvel's costume, since she's been Captain Marvel, has been boring. So that's just what it is.
No, but
Marvel,
if we use
pretty much the costume from.
If you bring up
Jessica Jones is just some chicken in a jacket. She always has been.
Okay, but then you've got Hellcat. From the same series, and again,
Hellcat hasn't been a superhero in the comics since she married Damian. What's his name?
You're still that's still reinforcing my point, though. My point is
that's not an MCU thing. That's a Marvel Comics thing.
MCU, I don't think so. And the reason why is that the MCU can choose which version of the character to adapt. Okay. And they're choosing to adapt the most boring versions of all of these characters. Just because this is the way that she's currently drawn now doesn't mean, I mean, they ignore canon whenever they want to anyway. They could say, oh, hey, we're going to adapt the traditional version of Hellcat. That's a choice. It's an option. The broader point I want to make is
the more traditional version of Hellcat, if you really want to get into it, would be Patsy Walker, teenager.
Okay. Why bring up the Patsy Walker deep lore? The point is that
come on, I love that, right? Like that's one of the things about the Patsy Walker Hellcat comic series that was such a disappointment, was because they were acknowledging and trying. You could tell that they were trying to incorporate all of like that lore within the character and giving it texture, but they were so non-committal about all of it. And the need to make her ex-husband gay was just like so uncomfortable in the context of the whole story that it was like.
So the broader point
Anyway.
I'm making there, as it connects to the superhero costume context, is kind of what Metal was bringing up, alluding to, which is a really interesting irony, which is the fact that DC, for all of its foibles, has, I think, done a better job of adapting superhero outfits for the big screen, at least as far as it goes with. I mean, you get Wonder Woman's outfit, regardless of how those films are. Like, it's a pretty banger outfit.
Yeah. The Turges skirt, that was like the best like chain. Like that's one thing that like the Turges are the like leather feathers on the outside that like Roman centurions would have on their skirts, and putting those on Wonder Woman's skirt is like the coolest thing to happen in a superhero comic. Like a mainstream superhero comic, like in decades.
I just love it. I just love the fact, because I mean, there's a part of me that would have been like, hey, I would have loved to have seen her in the completely traditional, like straight ripped from the comic outfit. But the fact that they went as far as they did, as opposed to being like, because you just know, like, actually, we do know, because back when Adrian Palicki was going to do the television show, the first promotional images we got for Wonder Woman on the screen, it was a generic kind of jumpsuit that they had slapped her in, and people had to almost burn down the internet to get her in a swimsuit type thing. So it's just, this is why I love superheroes, their outfits, and particularly how they are depicted in comics.
So this is why I like superheroes, because Wonder Woman in a swimming suit.
I mean, it's mostly the reason why she succeeded in the Golden Age, but
well, that and the whips and the chains and
the brassieres. But no, yeah. I'm a huge fan of superhero aesthetic. I am also okay. This is where I'll say with Cartoonicus's point. Cartoonicus loved the show Heroes because it was very different, and there was no superhero aesthetic whatsoever. It was just normal people getting superpowers, and I'm fine with that as a separate thing. The thing I don't like, the thing I do not appreciate, is when you take the latter and you stamp it on the former, and then say that it's better because of some reason. I'm fine with having a steak on the one hand and hamburger on the other, but if you cram a burger bun on a steak, I'm not going to be happy. And if you slap steak into what I want on a burger, you know what I mean? These things don't always mix. And unfortunately, what we've seen lately is both in comic and on film, the idea that I guess Heroes kind of aesthetic, those influences. Oh, it has to be realistic. It has to be, it has to be something that could be realistic, even though it's superheroes and none of it's realistic. That thing overdetermines and drains the literal color. Like when you look at some of the superhero outfits, there's certain points where they just blandify them, remove all the color from them, remove all the design from them, and all of the women. Because it's so funny because that point I brought up earlier about the fact that the men can peacock, they can basically wear different, interesting, fantastical outfits, and all of the women wear jumpsuit number 497, where in reality, women's fashion is the most varied thing in what women will wear.
Listen, I think that you're looking at this through a late 20th century lens, and if you go back to the time, if you look at the color photos in the time of black and white TV, you get those big check jackets. You get the big hats. I think men were peacocking every bit as then before.
I'm bringing up the point that, and it's a valid point, the fact that women's fashion, what women will wear on the runway,
they will not wear at the Costco.
But they won't. It's like, but they won't. But the whole idea behind a lot of super hero and super heroine design was this idea that you could essentially. It was like being a costume designer. It was put the person in the most interesting outfit ever, not the most practical one. In fact, sometimes an impractical outfit was what made that character cool.
And I will point out one MCU example that goes directly against your point. And is Hell from Ragnarok, Thor Ragnarok,
Hela?
right? Hela from Thor Ragnarok.
I did consider that one,
Yeah.
and I have to say that one also conforms to my thesis for a good chunk of the film.
Well, yeah, that's probably true because it doesn't have the giant headpiece on.
She does not. She's not wearing the full outfit till basically. I think it's the climax when she first shows up.
Not when she first shows up, but during the middle of them when she breaks Thor's hammer.
It's been a while since I've seen it.
When she breaks Thor's hammer, she's got the big headpiece on.
There's a chunk of that movie where she's just it's just her. She's just wearing a green.
Yeah, she kind of just loses it at a certain point, and then it comes back.
Yeah. Well, and that's the green leotard, whatever you want to call it. That's part of her design anyway. The difference is just how big is her hat in which scene.
She's a notable exception. I think she's the exception that still
I think so. And I mean, I can see her being an exception because she's also the villain, and she's supposed to be superimposing on it. And I didn't.
She's a goddess. I think they get, and because she never, I don't think she ever shows up on. That's another thing to point out. There is she. I don't think she ever, apart from the breaking of the hammer, I don't think she ever shows up on Earth. So they were.
You might be right about that.
She's entirely in Asgard. That entire film.
She's a foreign entity.
So there's never a scene. I'm glad there wasn't. There's never a scene where she's walking down this street of New York and people get to make fun of her outfit.
Or she's walking down and like knocks one of the big things on like a stop sign.
Right.
I think I widely agree with you though on a lot of what you're saying. Though I kind of assumed I would from the last episode. And I think a lot of it even goes back to the roots of where superhero outfits and stuff come from, which is like the American circus.
Yeah.
And it is a show. Like you're supposed to be doing this like fanciful, larger than life thing. Which is why like circus designs or its own progression from there kind of just like works in it.
Ooh, I haven't answered to Fizz's comment. All right, I have a theory, and I'm going to throw it out here. I think it's accurate. Let me double check my timeline though. I believe
Mystique never wears a white dress in movies.
Yes, and I believe the answer to that is when did the first X-Men come out?
2000.
It was 2000. Excellent. Okay, that's perfect timing. All right. The answer to this question is The Matrix. The Matrix had I think, huge impact on early Marvel cinema. I think
on everything.
I mean, it's true, but I'm just saying. I think you can draw, I think, a very straight line between the design aesthetic and even the action scenes. Like, I'm pretty darn certain that the early Mystique fight scenes are patterned off of Trinity.
I think there's something to be said for that, but you also have to remember that, like, before The Matrix came out, the first of that generation of successful Marvel movies was out. Fizz has got it, Blade. Yeah. And Blade was first. Blade hit the theater like before The Matrix was out. And they both, if you watch the making of featurettes, they both reference the same Hong Kong action movies as being like seminal in their development. But so I think that looking at X-Men, I think if you're going to give credit to the Matrix, you have to give as much credit to Blade because Blade was already.
Well, I think you could credit both of them almost equally.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yep.
Also, I just
Blade. It's such a good movie.
Blade too.
I know that if you compare the skin tight, leathery kind of aesthetic that Trinity has when she's doing some of her kung fu moves and spinning around the camera and stuff, I'm pretty sure they do very similar things with Mystique. And because Mystique back in the day was just she had the white dress and her power was basically shapeshifting and gun. She was when she was doing combat stuff, she was shooting that blaster or whatever. Like she wasn't. It was the X-Men films through that, I think, that lens of Matrix, Blade, and what have you, and Hong Kong Fooey that basically made it so that she's actually going to be a kung fu maven.
I love Hong Kong Fooey.
I think there is an additional reason though, because aesthetically, especially if you're talking about that Hong Kong influence, the type of white dress that she wears with like the slit going all the way down the side would look amazing in those type of action scenes. I think it was also for ease, which is why she had shorter hair, of the makeup effects and the CG
animation
that was available at the time.
That makes sense,
right?
Well, it also plays into the realism aspect too. Like, it's her, she's just walking around in this like skin that she just morphs as opposed to clothes that she would have to, they didn't want to have to address that concept of, where your clothes go or the clothes your skin. They just kind of cut to the quick there. And also, the other obvious answer to this is that it made her basically look naked, and that helps sell the sex appeal of the film. So
yeah, we can have nudity without being rated for nudity.
Right. Yeah. They got to have their cake and eat it too. And that might have been, that could probably be its own primary reason. But
although I would like to say that I preferred Rebecca Romaine in Punisher to her in X-Men. Yeah, that was a better performance. I'm gonna say it. Anyway, so
no, Colin actually brings up that in First Class she can still shapeshift with the clothes on. Listen, maybe she just developed as a person and realized that she was just more comfortable naked. She can change things anyway. She's just like, I wore clothes all my life. I don't need it anymore. I can just make them when I actually do. I'll just walk around naked.
I feel like there was some of that development because you see her, kind of, it's almost like she's losing her humanity slowly over the movies. But
right.
her changing with her clothes outfit on was clearly a mistake. No one will convince me otherwise.
Yeah, well, and one of the things that you had going on with the X-Men movies, the X-Men First Class movies, is they are supposed to be minors, and so it would seem far more scandalous to have,
I like that. I like the First Class. First Class is a nice step in the right direction for taking. We're talking about outfits. Okay. So for I think it's a step in the right direction in many ways, but germane to our conversation, for outfits, taking them away from just being boring black leather and trench coats to, hey, we're bringing the yellow black back. We're trying to make them a sort of a hybrid between their the more fantastical aspects of their costumes to that film look. So I like that they tried to pull things further. I think that the answer to this question, though, when people look at the new Deadpool film and they have a Wolverine costume that's so much close to comic book, and that's gotten such positive reception. We're just talking about the outfit, just the outfit, and it's better than any.
Looks like
I was going to bring up before
cheap trash.
I think it's better than anything he's been in the film series.
It is 100. Okay, look, the only reason
better than the black leather. I'm sorry.
The only reason that you can okay, fine. The only reason anybody likes that costume is because they're lying, because they're wanting to be fed member berries and wanting an excuse to give the corpos money again. I'm
not talking about that. I'm just talking about. I'm not talking about that. I'm literally just talking about it being a better superhero costume.
But it's not a better comparison. That's my point. Is it's not better. It's in fact trash, and people are lying to themselves, telling them that it's not trash, that it looks okay, because they want an excuse to give.
All right, hold on. If you separate your feelings there for a second, the argument we were talking about earlier, which was the fact that there are people. I don't plan on seeing the film.
No self-respecting man will wear that amount of yellow.
Oh my gosh. It is straight out of
this is fantasy.
Straight out of Jim Lee's, run on the X-Men, which a lot of people, including myself, like. Even if they just like the cartoon animated and the video games from that very wonderful decade of X-Men content. It's very close to that comic book rendition. And therefore, there are people who like comics who are going to like it. And that line of reasoning is not the same one as being just a brain-dead corpo seal. They're separate lines. I'm not saying you have to like it. I'm saying that people who don't conflate the two, is what I'm saying.
Also, something I've been trying to bring up for, I don't know, maybe 5 or so minutes now. I'm gonna hit you back against the no self-respecting man would wear that much amount of yellow. When you brought up earlier about the whole some things just don't translate well to 3D. I do think a lot of that. That was not the one I was going to think of.
Okay.
What did you say, Twitless?
I said Booster Gold.
Which I don't know if I would consider him a self-respecting man.
Yeah, that's one. And second of all, with Booster Gold's costume, if you were to realize that in the real world, it would be a lot more like that dark bronzy, like color they were using for Aquaman's armor in the first.
It should be
movie.
Gold.
Well, it should be. That's what I'm saying. But
they made it yellow.
It's gonna have a more. It's not going to be like bright yellow. It's going to have the complexity, dark, a little bit, slightly dark on the color scheme. It's going to have a lot of reflections, a lot of shadows in it.
when you brought up that some things don't translate well, I do believe that is also mostly the production's decision because they don't think the audience would like that, historically speaking. Less of even trying, because there's a lot of things that fantastically could translate well into 3D.
So-
and one of the best examples I have of that is if you've ever seen this wonderful fan film where they completely reenacted a scene directly from One Punch Man, and it looks stellar.
One Punch Man wears Saitama wears yellow, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's all
Okay.
yellow pretty
Yeah,
much
it's
with
all
like
yellow.
One
a
Punch
white
Man
cape.
is a farce. It's supposed to look bad.
I feel like I'm poking holes in that ship.
One Punch Man looks bad. It's supposed to look bad.
No, he looks great in that.
No,
film.
no. It's there's a paradox in One Punch Man.
Everything about One Punch Man is a paradox because
Yep, that's the point.
plays itself like it's a parody, but it's actually 100% serious about
right.
everything it does.
That's the anyway.
But that's what makes it a farce. Like that's
I like. So here's the thing with film. Before you even make the movie, there is an implied level of verisimilitude that the camera field implies to the audience that the comic page does not. This is the thing that I personally find to be fascinating. The camera field, the minute you see a camera field, you're automatically given a version of the world. Even if immediately you fill it with a bunch of CGI, special effects, the presence of the camera field is a presentation of a world to an audience that already imbricates certain conclusions to that audience. Whereas, in contrast, the comics page, broadly speaking, the illustrative page, has much more freedom because the camera field, as it were, is the pencil of the artist, which means the world that Doug TenNapel draws is completely different than the world that Todd McFarlane draws. And because they're controlling not just what the camera sees, but the camera itself, the apparatus, as it were.
okay.
You're able to do something very. You're given more freedom. It doesn't mean that you can't
The same
do
thing
things
happens
in
with
film.
animation too. I should point out.
Correct. No, exactly. Same thing. Because of that additional layer of freedom, it's much easier to sell an audience on certain things in fantasy. This is why I love the comics book page in particular, and why I really love how comic book costumes are able to work there.
If I may, it's strange though because you have always disliked when superheroes get cartooned in comics.
Sorry, say that again?
I've always heard you say that you don't like it when a superhero comic style is too cartoony. You prefer a much more realistic and much more detailed approach, which means that you're naturally putting a whole lot more extra details in there that would have to be scrutinized that way.
I think it's just because you're looking more for that high fantasy aesthetic in a way, just like the modern American version of high fantasy.
I think that's
because
let's take the example we have on right in front of us.
I mean, mind you, I'll be fair, you love any kind of animation that is made out of a superhero comic as well, and those automatically have to be simplified down. So clearly there is room for a more simplified style, but
well, okay, so if we take a look at the picture that's right in front of us, right? If that was a real person in the outfit, it wouldn't look like that. Alex Ross demonstrated that to us repeatedly. When he basically put normal people in the outfits, they don't look like this. So
and that's what the problem
it's not realism. It is actually something that goes actually Dan Lawless was posting about this today. He said it is both real and surreal at the same time. It's hyper real. It goes beyond realism. It implies it actually fools you into thinking it's more real than something that would be. The hyper detail on the musculature there is more real than reality is. And so it tricks you into thinking it's more real than it is. And this is a wonderful kind of like
In other words, it's ancient Greek antiquity.
Sure. That's what makes superhero comics so cool, because it integer overflows. It kind of tricks you into thinking it's more realistic than it is, and while still being able to accomplish so many awesome. I love this. So, and I'm okay with a more cartoony presentation as well. Like I do have I like Darwin Cook. I like Bruce Timm. Like there's room for it all. What I don't like is when someone comes in, and this is a very common thing that we see nowadays, is someone comes in and they say, this isn't real, I have to fix it. And they do it whether it's on the comic book page or they do it on the cinema screen. I don't like that approach. I almost instinctively kick back whenever someone says, well, that's not real, I have to fix this. And there's so many scenes. There's a scene, I believe, in WandaVision where this happens. There's a scene in the Supergirl television series where this happens. They deliberately dress up the character in an outfit that's close to where their comic book counterpoint, only to have them roll their eyes and say, this is stupid, I can't.
Just last week we were talking about when the movies will deliberately dump on something that has existed in the past.
Oh, there's no quicker way for me to hate your show or property or comic, because they'll do it like they're doing in the comics now too. They're having there's comic book characters. Carol Danvers, the comic book panel that broke my heart, where they have the bastardized version of Carol Danvers who looks ugly and awful and in that stupid motorcycle getup jumpsuit. And she's looking at a character. She's looking at this beautiful woman who is drawn exactly how Carol was drawn years ago. And she's just like, who is this poser? And it was so awful. Why do you have to ruin? This is why people.
I think this is the one detail all four of us can agree on, no matter what.
Well, that would break my heart if I didn't already write Carol off back in 2011 after Avengers vs. X-Men, when they functionally had already killed my favorite Marvel characters. So
I liked. Wait. What? I liked Marvel or Avengers vs. X-Men. Who'd they kill?
I hated that. Well, they killed her personality, because that was basically the start of modern Carol.
Wait, are you sure that wasn't Civil War II or something? She had almost
she was already herself by Civil War II.
Yeah. I'm just saying she didn't.
That kind of started in.
She has like only because she only has like cameo appearances in that series.
Well, that's also when they decided to make her
Captain Marvel
for the first time.
She's wearing her black outfit in the first.
Yeah, she starts off.
Okay.
But so anyway, in that series that they basically killed her.
I know I think it's Kelly Sue DeConnick. I just blame her. I'm pretty sure it's Kelly Sue DeConnick that launches. I think it's Marvel Now. I think it's right on the cusp. It's like right after Avengers vs. X-Men. That's when the Marvel Now initiative started. Yeah. And that's when they soft relaunched a bunch of those characters. And that's when they said, no. I think it was Kelly Sue DeConnick who launched Captain Marvel, and they gave her the weird. They lopped off her hair. They had her wear this, and she had like, I think it was the "We Can Do It" pose. Like it was just this whole.
Oh yeah, it was definitely her.
Yeah.
They were setting that up since that was the next thing on the docket as early as the Avengers vs. X-Men.
So, changing the subject somewhat.
Okay.
The reason I'm sharing this particular screen was because I wanted to talk about it. This was pretty much it was pretty much my introduction to the tactical concept. I talked about this a little last week, but I decided to look it up for this thing. If you look at Batman's belt, Batman's utility belt, instead of each of the compartments being perfectly symmetrical and exactly the same, they're different. They're different around, right? For different kinds of devices and stuff, different kinds of utilities. And I said, "Oh, now that's cool. I like that. That's awesome." And so I started seeing little bits of things in there because I as hyper real as Batman's physique was, right, in my mind as a 11-year-old boy, I wanted this to be as I'm probably 12 at this point. I wanted this to be hyper real in its stuff too, right? In like when occasionally you'd see like boot prints, and all that kind of stuff, and I just thought it was the coolest thing ever. Flyfox says, Needs more pouches, maybe some on his thighs.
The older.
So, the thing is, I wasn't necessarily on board with all the pouches, but that kind of thing got me thinking about it. And so, like, there are some characters who I think really fit that tactical aspect really, really well. And so when Jack Knight Starman was just wearing street clothes, that but with the welding goggles and with the sheriff's badge, the Cracker Jack sheriff's badge, I'm like, dude, I dig it. When Superboy was introduced with the popped collar and the leather jacket, motorcycle jacket, I was like, there. I thought those were really cool add-ons to stuff.
I want to defend the pouch look, because there is something very 90s about it, and there are certain characters. I don't think it works for all of them, but there are characters that I think still work for that.
Yeah,
and so even with all the pouches, like a Cable, because he was born in that aesthetic, and
I'm wearing cargo pants right now.
To be fair,
I'm wearing the equivalent of cargo pants for what would be pants. I have medical scrubs on, pockets everywhere.
I'm just defending the fact that there are certain characters where, like, if you give me that character, I think the three that I like it and still like it the most on: Cable, Forge, and Bishop. Every time they've done modern Bishop, he looks terrible. And every time you see classic Bishop with the long kind of curly ponytail and like the pouch tactical outfit, it works. There's certain characters that still works for, and every other version doesn't.
This might play a lot to the concept of a character being developed and designed in a given time period. How much does that time period hang on to them for the remainder of their history? And are there certain things you'll ever be able to betray? A great example of that might be the never-ever-ending argument over whether or not Superman should be wearing the red trunks.
Yes, we settled that one. That one got settled when the new.
No, that'll never be settled.
No, it's settled.
It will 100% be settled. It absolutely is. And the thing is, I actually
tell Hollywood that.
If you guys, first of all, if you guys take a look at if you guys see the picture that I used for the thumbnail, it's a Mother Goose and Grimm comic where the Justice League renames itself as the guys who wear their underpants on the outside. And I actually had somebody approach me today seeing that and say, so what's the story? What is up with the little shorts? Why do superheroes wear the little shorts? And I wanted to spend a little bit of time here talking about that, why that is in there, before we get going on there.
Grant Morrison, of all people, actually nailed it, and it was exactly what the Metal said. He said, anyone who complains about the trunks never went to a circus and saw the circus strongman.
Yep.
It's like
the trapeze artist or anybody, they all had them
right
on the outside.
and or also like wrestlers, like itinerant traveling wrestlers from the early 1900s, and boxers.
Well, and even
also
the wrestling that became pro wrestling started in the circus too.
Yep.
It's all just goes back to the circus.
So that's where the trunks come from.
Right? Grant Morrison's one good take.
But the other, that's fair. But the other side about it too is this is something that I think gets missed a lot. When they took the little trunks away from Batman's costume, they ran into this problem. After Nightfall, when they took the trunks away for Superman during New 52, they ran into this problem too, which is the fact that if you don't put little trunks on these characters that have one color, that's not black, right? With black, you can sometimes get away with it, but if it's a colored outfit, you got to draw the bulge or the legs don't work right. If they've got a little different color, all you have to do is colored trapezoid right over the bits. Nobody has to use their imaginations. Nobody gets scarred. But if you don't have those little trunks in there, you got to draw the bulge or the legs don't look right. And that's the issue that we have there.
To bring it to Cartoonicus' point, the debate may never be settled, but in my mind it is. That's how
that's how everyone feels.
It's not really a debate, right? It's the issue is actual readers and even the general audience at home who knows the characters find something weird when you don't have the trunks there and people complain. But there's always this one person every single time who comes and is like, wouldn't it be better if we just took those trunks off? And everyone disagrees with the production team on it, but they still go ahead and try it again anyway.
That is
It's not really a debate. It's
a cycle. It's a recurring.
Yeah.
But see, I'm the one who doesn't like the trunks, even when I see it.
Well, you're entitled to be wrong. It's okay.
Yep, very much so.
But no, I
Still, my point is that sorry to cut you off, but
go ahead.
That Superman has a certain feel about him that comes out of a 1920s Americana time period.
38
and
it's 30s. It's 30s, not 20s, but
really?
1938.
That was earlier than that.
I mean, you can still throw the 20s in there though, just because a lot of the designs and like the circus and stuff come from that period.
Right.
It's
to the
very,
point when it was made.
And it was consistent back to the 1880s too. I mean, this was a situation. This was a time when mass market media was just beginning, so fashion wasn't moving as quick, especially not.
It's very 30s.
Yeah.
It is very late. It is very late 30s.
Well, yeah, I'm saying
it's definitely also
saying that,
post
like Superman as a whole was definitely late 30s, but in terms of like a lot of the costuming, we're looking at like.
I'd still say it's. I mean, if you want to say there's similarities between 20s and 30s, that's fine. I'm just saying it is the most 1930s thing that was ever released.
Well, we know that it's definitely not trying to be 20s, right? Even in
right.
the 30s,
There's no flappers. There's no flappers. There's none.
The type of suits have already changed.
That's the only thing people think about when they think about the 20s, the flappers.
I'm just saying that none of that's there. It's very much.
It would be in your face
creature of
if they were trying to do that.
Yeah.
Creature of the late 1930s, early 1940s. But that doesn't detract too much from what you're saying. So go ahead. You were
right. Just that I feel like when you think about how Superman is portrayed, who Clark Kent is, there's this very classic Americana feel that comes with it, and that tends to include things like the broad shoulders, the big fluffy loopy hairstyle that really no one wears anymore. But when they tried to do a mullet in the 1980s, it did not work at all. Right.
That was the 90s.
Was it? You're right. It was.
That's when.
And it wasn't that they tried to do the mullet. They wanted to do long hair like I have, but DC editorial said no. He has to have the S curl, and nobody could figure out how to do long hair and have like one little bit of hair here, so they just drew him with a mullet.
Well, either way, it would have been an appropriate hairstyle for the time, but it still didn't work because we have these ideas, even if they're subconscious, about a lot of these characters. And so,
I was never a fan of the super mullet.
Putting pouches and tactical gear and stuff like on Superman, or trying to remove his cape and replace it with one big, what's the word I'm looking for? Jumpsuit kind of thing.
The electric blue.
Right. There are certain things that can work with certain characters as you're trying to edit them and make them more realistic or update them, modernize them, whatever, and things that just will not work with certain characters.
That's fair. That's a fair point. There are certain characters that are more open to being modernized than others. Obviously, classic New Flash, right? And that sparked the Silver Age is probably a really important example to bring up.
And that's why often if I'm trying to think about how to this costume just doesn't seem to work in modern day, how can I update it? I might just do the opposite and say, what if instead we go back to the original time period and do a period piece and have fun with Batman as a detective in the age of detective comics?
I'm okay with that, but I also don't like it if that's the only option. When people go, well, the only time it was believable was the 1930s. I'm like, no, Superman's traditional outfit works just as fine today as it did back then, and I will die on that hill when people say no, it won't work.
Superman's traditional outfit is not his original outfit.
It's pretty darn close.
It's pretty close. I mean, you've got different
things to it.
You've got differences in shapes of boots. You've got differences in the shape of the belt. You got differences in the color of the shield, the shape of the shield. But
whether or not the S shows up on
effect of it.
It's funny because I was trying not. I didn't want to I literally just read the first 2 years of Superman. So like last week. So I just saw the costume.
You having
and
Superman withdrawal?
a little, but like, like, oh, where they had, the chevron on the cape or not, and stuff. But no, it's mostly the same outfit. The tweaks are, it's more in common. It has more in common than it doesn't.
But you don't think that those tweaks are random, do you? They have happened throughout history as people have tried to update him, even in the comics. And
they were random back in the day because they weren't very good at their jobs, and
yeah. A lot of times where people were trying to draw the same thing and they ended up drawing something different.
That's literally the explanation for why Lex Luthor doesn't have hair. So
I feel like you're actually
it did happen by random.
You're actually inadvertently proving my point, because by the fact that we're talking about Superman, the hardest character to change anything about, kind of shows that, he has certain visuals that are baked into him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I agree. No, with that broader
and people
point,
have tried to change and edit things all throughout history, and the best they've been able to do is like a few lines here and there.
Well, and a lot of that is it comes down to refining. It refines as it goes. And like Colin says, oh no, the biggest difference is the S shape. The world is going to end. I mean, and that's really part of it. Is it makes it, look a little cooler, a little easier to draw. And so that's really gets on that too. So without changing the essence of what it is.
I think it does have something to do, and this goes for both Marvel and DC, or any character really, but how popular and iconic that character's identity and outfit become inculcated into the general public and the intended audience. And so there are a couple examples of this. Superman is obviously number one, where there's just certain things you just can't really change about the character, or people will just reject it. And every time they try it, even if it was meant to be, because I know the blue electric Superman was never meant to be his ongoing look going forward. They were just doing it for a little bit, and they just, they did some PR pieces. Here's Superman's new look. Everyone thought, oh, they've changed Superman forever, and had like a hernia about it. Mm-hmm. Regardless, you can't change Superman. It doesn't work. Stop trying. So to cartoonically, to your point there, yes, there are certain characters like that it's just so hard boiled into them. You just can't do it. On the Marvel side, it's not just a DC thing. You really can't change that much about Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. If you say, hey, here, we're going to do Spider-Man, we're going to take off the mask. Just watch the world catch on fire.
It's funny though, because the movies usually spend less time in the mask.
I mean,
than with FaceTime.
When he's in the outfit, he's meant to have the mask on, and everyone knows it. And if you said this is the new design for Spider-Man, and we're just going to take the mask off, there would be like riots. And in fact, when they did this to Wonder Woman briefly, when they said,
right.
So you want to pull up the picture for that one? During the I think it was the 60s, they decided to just completely remove Wonder Woman from her superhero.
That was in the 70s. It was Denny
70s
O'Neil. Okay. That was Denny O'Neil who actually did that. It was like 72, 73, something like that.
And they made her into like a generic kind of adventure, kind of secret agent type character.
A spy, martial arts kind of character.
And
taught the skills of the East by the mighty I Ching.
A feminist magazine, Ms. Magazine, I think their inaugural it was an early issue, I think, of Ms. Magazine, had a hissy fit over it. A feminist magazine. You would expect the feminists to say, how dare you have a sexualized woman? But no, the feminists said, how dare you take away our awesome superhero woman and make her mundane. And they printed a cover, and it was like the original. It was Wonder Woman on the cover. Trina Robbins was a big fan of that type of thing. So like I said, even the feminists didn't like it when they took away the superhero outfit.
Yeah,
so there's
the one powerful woman in comics, and you took away her power.
So there's certain characters you can't do it.
Man, there's so much that is bizarre. We need to have just a Wonder Woman conversation one of these nights.
I just read. I'm reading her current first.
Speaking of people who take something from the past and dump on it and make everybody angry.
Well, I mean, and
they've done there, literally crossing it out. Like, nope.
Am I the only who's noticing the fact that that subliminal messaging they did with the outfit too? It was almost like they were trying to appeal to the. What
is the subliminal messaging?
That's just an upside down L. This is like.
It does it go over the other shoulder too? Under the hair? I don't know.
I don't think so.
Why an L?
It's hard to tell. It's just really ugly.
Okay, well, okay.
I'm not getting the significance of an L.
Yeah.
You're not okay.
I'll lesbian. I'm assuming that's what you're going for.
No,
I don't see it either.
That's exactly.
Was lesbian even a word back then? Yes, you sweet summer child.
There's a difference between a word existing and being normal in public.
Yes.
Lesbian has been a word for like 1,000 years. So
yeah, but as a kid, I would not have picked up on that. So yeah,
I might be wrong about that. It may be less than 1,000.
Like it comes from
but
the
it comes
the
from
whole
Lesbos.
right,
the island
much
was
older.
where
the whole thing
We're
was
not talking about that.
which by the way is a
culture in the 70s.
Which is a definitely an interpretation that I believe
anachronistic interpretation.
Still, it was an interpretation that people applied to Wonder Woman specifically.
Yeah. Well, and it was the idea that there's a big debate about the interpretation of Sappho's poetry, but one of the things during the time when Marsden was coming up with the idea, it was largely believed to be same-sex attracted stuff, and her Great Caesar's ghost exclamation, Wonder Woman's from the Golden Age, suffering Sappho. In case any of you kiddies think that it's not there to indoctrinate you.
So the thing about Wonder Woman
behavior.
Do you want to save that for that stream? But
yes,
the thing about the only thing I'll say is this is a preview, is that when
we're going to do it, but we have to now.
People like to laugh at Wortham, right? And the alarmist approach to, superhero comics are trying to put these subliminal messaging and degeneracy into our young kids' minds. And the one time that it's 100% accurate is when Wonder Woman's concerned.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it was. Wortham got a number of things right and a number of things wrong.
Yeah.
And he wasn't 100% wrong, but he was
even Carmine Infantino said that. I think I told you that story that Carmine Infantino said, regarding that guy, he wasn't completely wrong.
Well, also just calling something anachronistic doesn't mean that it's ever going to change how it affects culture, right? It's like gladiators. There is absolutely nothing you can do at this point to correct people on how gladiating actually was. If you mention the word gladiator, it's just going to be Hollywood movies starting from like Spartacus going through the movie Gladiator forever. That's it. That's just what gladiating was in people's heads.
Yep. Because isn't it, to correct me if I'm wrong on this, it was a relatively few gladiatorial matches that were to the death.
Yes. In fact, in many ways, it was closer to professional wrestling than it was to anything else. People had their favorite gladiators, too. You can find even like vases and tapestries that have like people basically equivalent of having wall posters in your room these days. People would cheer on it, and you would anger the crowd if your favorite like wrestler was killed in a battle.
So, yeah. Flyfox Pro says Vikings wore horn helmets. Prove me wrong.
That's another one.
Next time. But yeah, so anyway, we actually, Hutch, the funny thing is that we have really not hardly tucked into Marvel at all.
Crying out loud. Okay.
So I don't know that we'll actually get there because I don't want to spend a whole bunch of time on that, but I do want to Cartoonicus. You said you wanted to talk about Catwoman's costume specifically, and I wanted to get onto that before we change the subject to our own characters. That's where I want to end things on.
It is interesting, actually. We've been spending a lot of time talking about female costumes in comics, and their sensuality and all. Because, let me get Catwoman up here. I originally meant to talk about this back when we were talking about how TV and movies and whatnot have had reverse effects on comics. And I noticed this strange pattern with Catwoman where, she starts out, let me make sure this is in fact up. Just making sure yeah, okay. So when she started out, whoa, what, my computer browser is doing something crazy here. Get away. Okay. Okay. There we go. She was like most female characters when they got a costume. They basically just took someone in a dress and put like a cape on them, called it a day.
That's what I do on the regular.
I noticed this was a trend. Eventually they did kind of, update it, make it look more dynamic. Here, at least, she does seem like a super villainess as opposed to, Kathy Kane. Oh, sorry, I'm not sharing it. I got to make sure I hit that button every time. But then along came the Adam West show, and somebody just completely reinvented it altogether, right? And my guess is that has more to do with just a lack of resources and funds and the ability.
I don't think it'd be resources. Like it's the cape is just a piece of cloth. It was probably it was an aesthetic problem. I would assume it'd be an aesthetic decision.
I think it's both. Obviously the cat suit was very popular at the time. So
it looks sexier, and it's probably easier to choreograph.
Yeah, you'll notice that they also completely lost the cowl, though. They suddenly replaced it with it. That to me sounds like a budget issue. Right.
No,
there's no way it's a budget issue.
That or they just want to show her hair, but they showed her hair from the.
Yes, this is the situation with it is 100% to highlight Julie Newmar as an example of what women could look like. Julie Newmar was a gorgeous woman, and they were definitely going to be playing on that.
Well, so then in the comics, suddenly we get an update, right? Same general idea, but now they're leaning into that catsuit thing going on, right? So then, a little bit later, they make another movie.
Well, that's more than a little bit later.
Well, like I would admit I'll have some, and there's some stuff here I'm not completely familiar with. It is interesting that she still has that same necklace in this version, whatever it is. So I'm sure. So some back and forth.
I can fill in a couple of these gaps here.
Okay.
So the green outfit, with the
Cat of Nine Tails
there. That one is the from the 70s, and that was done in that was the costume they used in the new Batman Adventures cartoon.
Which is a horrendous weapon to give somebody. Like if you want to feel more than just a villain, that is a weapon you give to somebody.
Yeah, that's very true.
The point, I think you've made the point, though. There are always going to be in comics a few of those costumes that are just obscure, weird side things that happened for like 2 weeks straight, and then
the costume with the blue leggings.
Yeah,
I believe was in the 80s. They had that as well.
I'm trying to remember the big anniversary issue that introduced Jason Todd as Robin, and Killer Croc kills his parents. I do remember that was the gathering of all the Bat villains, and I'm trying to remember what she was wearing, but I do remember it was like a dress. It was like she was wearing a dress again.
I think she was back to the purple dress.
Yeah, purple and green, but it was purple and green, which looked so odd to me because it was like I remember her being more cat-like, but yeah, she's...
Well, the purple and green dress was used throughout the 80s in marketing stuff, too.
Yeah.
So, on board games and sticker packs and all that kind of stuff was back to the purple and green dress. But in the comics, in mid-80s, to move to that black costume, that's back there behind the girl with the green dress, her first outfit, that black one next to it, was in everything between... the Dark Knight, Batman Year One, and all the way up to 92 with the movie. And you got the Michelle Pfeiffer one. And then shortly after that, that purple with the black tall boots, the thigh-high boots.
The Jim Ballant one.
Well,
Ballant one.
And that's what we're getting here, right?
Sorry. That was ahead of the game, but
yeah.
Well,
this version...
That I kind of like the cocktail waitress one in the very back, but overall, I've just never really been a big fan of Catwoman's design. I like her as a character, just never really liked her design.
I like I think the designs that work, and this to Cartoonicus's broader point, there are characters that have designs where you really don't change much, and I think those are characters where people. I think a lot of them tend to be very, very popular. And like I said, Superman's very, very popular. And then there are certain characters who, like I said, their costume identity doesn't seem to lock in, I guess is the term I'd use. It doesn't lock in as hard. Sometimes it locks in later, and sometimes it just never locks in. So, for example, the example where I'd say that it locks in later.
Sometimes multiple different versions lock in, and everybody has their own
Well, then it doesn't really lock. I wouldn't say that's a lock.
No, because there can be like these very specific, like 3 out of 10 are the ones that everybody say, well, we'll like this, this, or this.
Yeah, I think you would need a plurality of people. Like if you divide the audience into thirds, then it's enough that you could call it locked in. But if you don't have a plurality, then it's just kind of all over the place.
So Flash, new Flash basically locks in Flash's look. And so, you had a character that looked a particular way. New Flash comes along, kind of changes a bit, and then locks that in. And then basically that's Flash forever.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Catwoman's one of those characters. And this is another thing to point out is the fact that Catwoman is I'm not going to say villain, but she's often a villain.
She started out as a villain.
And it's more, I do think it is fair to say that villains, I think, often get, I could be wrong about this, but I think that villains get a little bit more latitude here because it's like, we often don't see them every installment. Time has passed. Here's that villain again. And you don't, it gives you a little bit more freedom unless it's a villain that shows up every single episode, in which case
I can agree with that too. Right, because I said I don't really care for most of her designs, at all. But I also don't feel like I have to like a villain's design. Personally, I still like her as a villain. I don't have to like her design.
Right.
And she's memorable. And I feel like that's just true about villains in general.
Yeah,
I would agree.
Imagine saying you really like, Mr. Zhaz's design.
The weird thing about Catwoman is that aside from the kitty cat ears, there's nothing about it that says cat. There's a couple variations where she has a tail, but there's
how much about Batman
except for when it finally goes to like a cat suit, a cat burglar cat suit look. That kind of goes along with the design where it looks sleek. It looks sleek like a kitty cat.
Right.
But yeah,
which is one of the things that I want to talk about with Catwoman's design. I don't want to get too far ahead of where Cartoonicus is going, because I have a favorite costume that we have not discussed yet.
Oh, okay.
I want to talk about why.
Let me get through it here, because what I'm trying to show is that there's this strange pattern. I'm going to go back to this one here, right? She's got purple. She's got a cape. She's wearing a dress, and she has now consider the iconic.
She's the villain colors, purple and green.
Yep. True.
Oops. Oh, shoot. Did I just...
I love that color pairing, by the way. I gravitate towards it constantly.
So, the show comes along, completely changes it up. Keeps the ears, but that's all. Changes the cowl into a mask, turns the entire thing into a cat suit, introduces the color black. Okay. Comics follow up, turning it into a cat suit, keeping her colors and keeping the cowl, but using a heck of a lot of black here, right? Later versions that we just discussed kind of worked off of that.
Is that black or is that just inking? Because the color is meant to be.
But you get used to her wearing black, essentially, right? So then along comes the later versions, and then eventually the movie now changes it to full black with the cowl, no cape or anything this time. And of course, the movies immediately just about led and then influenced everything that happened in the cartoon. So, roughly the same thing. However, the cartoon decides to go back to some of
Right. I have
old elements.
So I can fill in the blank there a little bit.
Right.
So Bruce Timm said he didn't particularly like some of the design decisions that were handed to him, specifically because of the influence of the Burton films. Because of the popularity of the Burton films, Catwoman had to be blonde, for example. And she had to be an animal rights activist and everything. And so the second that Bruce Timm had the opportunity to revise all of those things, he took that opportunity. So some of these decisions, and the same thing applies to Penguin, I think a couple other characters, but basically the idea was the fact that the show didn't choose this. Basically Warner Brother executives chose this for the people who made the show.
Mm-hmm. Notice though that, she's basically hearkening back to that necklace.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Right.
And there was a belt in that costume too.
She was famous for that belt, which was around her hips, not her waist. Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So they're taking off from the film, but they're still editing certain details, and they're bringing some of those older details back. So then, what do the comics do? Only notice they brought back the purple from way back here, right? They got rid of the belt, making the whole thing
that wasn't that way back, because they were doing that purple, before 1984. So this is like less than 10 years,
right?
And even during that time frame, when in the comics she was wearing black, just a black cat suit. In all the marketing and stickers and that stuff, she was wearing that purple and green.
Well, nonetheless, it's several versions back though. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They bring back the purple. They got rid of that belt, so the whole thing is now more sleeker looking, which can harken back to this version, of course. And it is darker simply because purple in itself is a darker shade. So then the next cartoon comes out, and what do we got?
Jeez.
Which is basically
that is horrifying.
The same as this version.
I hate that last season's redesigns of everything. The simple, so-called simple redesigns.
Some of them were okay. But
there's like two that were winners. Scarecrow is amazing looking.
Scarecrow's the worst.
It was definitely something
I like
they did with
I just like Scarecrow.
It's utterly horrifying. It makes him look scary.
Well, I want to print that out and then put it into the fire pit and just set it on fire.
The thing I could never understand about this design: why is her face blue? I can never understand that.
They did that with the Joker too.
The Joker makes sense. I can accept the Joker part.
The reason why it's so that it actually looks like, so it stands out from negative space and still looks white. That's actually why
this is function. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not okay.
Yeah.
It
just
just
looks
makes
too
her
much like Harley Quinn in a Catwoman.
Yeah, you're right. She makes her look like
there
a
you go.
character.
I hadn't thought about that, but that's really great.
Yeah,
I agree. I hate it. I'm not a fan of this one.
Well, I want to point out that we have started a fight in the chat about the Scarecrow design.
Oh no! What have you done? Why?
They're squaring up.
Okay, can I say this? Can I say this? Can I try to like thread the needle here? Okay,
Is her face even white? That's an excellent question, Fizz, and I don't have an answer.
Her face is white because that's Tim Burton would go, yeah, because everybody has to be a corpse, and that is what looks hot to him is corpses.
Oh gosh,
he's got some problems.
Oh, that's hilarious.
I want to defend both Scarecrows.
Okay.
Oh, no.
I'm going to defend both. Okay.
Can we do that afterward?
Okay.
There's a fight in the chat. I have to address chat. Okay.
So don't lose the Catwoman. Is basically we'll keep going with Catwoman.
I'm going to do this real fast. This is real fast. Okay. So, all right. Original Scarecrow is good because it looks like a Scarecrow. It actually looks like what a Scarecrow would look like. All right. Yeah. So it wins on that point. All right. However, it looks goofy as hell, and it doesn't sell the idea of fear. The new design sells the scary part extremely well and makes me respect the character as a super scary, like terrifying villain. And that part I really, really like. Doesn't do nearly as good of a job as selling the actual Scarecrow idea. Okay. I think that where you fall between those two ideas is where you're going to fall on which one you like. So that's me defending both. Back to your regular program.
I just like the second Scarecrow, Tim Scarecrow design, because it does not look like a scientist. He looks like a monster, and he should look like a scientist. Because
Do
that's
I
the whole
even
premise.
dare bring up the movie version?
The movie version is infinitely better than the second Tim design. And I didn't like it.
All right.
I liked it within its context, okay, but I didn't like it outside of that.
So this is funny.
As much as I like Cillian Murphy,
despite everybody loving Bruce Timm, apparently nobody likes his costumes.
I like some of them.
All right, so this version, like it or hate it, though, is
I like
kind
the
of
Mr.
important.
Freeze design.
Let's not get distracted. Keep going with the Catwoman.
Because ever since then, Catwoman has always worn black. In every version, comics, movies, TV, you name it, whatever the design is, she's always full black. She's always full tight suit, and very little added details. Now, modern Catwoman takes this and they go with that. What did you call it?
Tactical.
Tactical look,
look.
Right, but this is not even the best example of this costume. This is.
There are a lot of them. It was hard to find.
Was that Jim Lee who started that one with Hush?
No. This costume was designed by Darwin Cook, and Darwin Cook's Darwin Cook rendition of this costume is the best version of the character.
I went for the one that I thought looked the least like a superhero costume, because that is what you started to get, is that she's looking far more like an actual cat burglar. And the biggest detail of that, of course, is these signature orange goggles, which may come before or after the Batman TV show. I'm not actually sure. Except, once again, we may have a back and forth going on here, but definitely the cartoon took from that one way or another. So this is basically what we've been doing for, 10, 15, maybe 20 years now. They go and make the movie, and they utilize that same tactical look, except they go back to the mask and the ears from way back here.
But the mask is actually glasses that flip up. The ears
I don't care.
Glasses.
We know what the look they're going for is. I am getting whiplash from this constant back and forth, this dance.
Welcome to comics.
Whiplash.
The comics and the films do with each other. Where they trade up. They keep going back to earlier versions, but then they also keep pushing forward from other versions.
Again, if you read the more you read the comics, the more you'll get they
colors.
The amount of times Iron Man has changed an outfit.
Yeah. Iron Man changes all.
Changing is changing. But it's fascinating, this dance we go back where we're always getting something from the past, but then also pushing something forward. But then the next version takes that something, gets rid of it, uses something else from the past and pushes itself forward instead. And we just keep going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth.
But I really think
It's
you're
hilarious.
getting. I mean, with the Dark Knight Rises, she's not even trying to do a cat thing, except that her glasses, when they flip up, kind of look like ears.
Right.
She's not trying to do a cat thing.
It doesn't matter what she was
trying
doing.
to do a cat thing.
I don't even think she's
matters
referred
what
to. I don't even think she's
movie
referred
was
to
trying
as
to do.
Catwoman ever.
She's not.
Yeah, they just call her Selena the whole film.
Yeah.
That was funny. Yeah. I don't know why they were against the.
I will say this. Although I'm a big traditional. This is kind of goes back to what we talked about at the very beginning. Although I'm a big traditionalist for superhero outfits, I will say that Catwoman is one of the characters where I'm actually okay with the more tactical look on her. I tend to like her more with that. The look I like the least is Cape. That's just personal taste. I'm not gonna, if someone likes that look, I'm not going to judge it at all. So
yeah, because I think since I haven't cared for pretty much any of her looks, though. Like I said, the cocktail weight just won. You could just make her a cat variant of a cocktail bunny, give her the tail and everything. That would work. But overall, just play into the personality. She's like a cat burglar. So just give her an outfit that would work for a cat burglar.
Well, I like this look, but I like them preserving the ear part, because without that, she's not.
Catwoman, right?
Yeah. You need to preserve something of it.
This is why this is my favorite Catwoman design, right?
Mhm.
is because it's not like some sort of like lycra bodysuit, right?
Mhm.
The fact that it doesn't look like it's just painted on, the fact that it actually looks like a cat burglar outfit. It's got pouches, it's got the things, it's got gloves. It's not loose fitting, but it's not like tight either. And Darwin Cook pulled this off perfectly.
I don't know, man. That's pretty tight, man.
Yeah, but it's not tight in a way that it's not tight in a way that looks like it'll tear when it's not doesn't look like
It's
nylon.
not body paint.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not nylons.
I was
right?
gonna say that's still pretty tight though.
Well,
Look at those
but
hips.
Yeah. Well, as far as sexiness goes, I mean, the huge ring for pulling down that zipper.
Yeah.
It's very suggestive.
It is, but the thing is like during this series, right, with Brubaker and Cook, it wasn't pulled down, right? The minute Cook left the series, the ring spent the entirety of the life like circling around her navel. That's when I quit buying the book. I was just like,
I thought you were going
Rhys,
somewhere
that
else
is
about
called
pulling that ring down.
That is Chekhov's gun. You put the ring there, it has to come down. I'm sorry.
And yet it didn't for 50 issues.
You did miss a major redesign during the Jim Balent run. They went with a whole, like an armored bodysuit thing for a little bit.
That's very true.
Yeah. But the Jim Balent costume was, I mean, that was reasonably famous. That's when she had her own book. And I think it was the first time she had her own book. And he was the artist on, was it the entire run or most of the run? But, and that purple costume, it's gone back to purple, but it does lend it not only affected her look, but it also affected what she did, because she used to be a jewel thief and now she's obviously smuggling soccer balls. So, it completely changed who she is. But
nowadays she seems to do a lot of.
I will say the Balent design is after looking at that whole ring of designs, the Balent design is top. I even if I'm kind of like, hey, you've won me over with a tactical outfit, I do like that design quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I can go with either. I like how Jim Lee drew it for Hush. I've just started another.
I can't stand Hush.
I know, but
actually, I've got a friend.
He's talking about visuals. He's talking about art.
I like Jim Lee's
like the art in Hush. I just like the art in Hush. I think it actually kills the story, and the story isn't good to begin with.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's my prediction: the next Catwoman design will attempt to look like this movie version, except it'll be green.
The movie version being the Batman movie version,
because they already did that one,
right?
And they basically just took and they just. I think it's just this. It's it's.
Well, and they have they've recently redone her costume, and it's got this weird one where it's like got straps and an open armpit design, and it's
I was having to avoid that when I was looking for pictures of the last one.
And it was really terrifyingly strange. I don't understand why anyone would do that.
It was really hard just to find this one image here that I needed as an example, because there are like 19 versions of basically the same thing, but they're all doing weird stuff like that. I was like just looking for something that would give a good example of what I was talking about. I was like, man, despite having this signature look for a while, they've actually been experimenting a lot the whole time.
Well, yeah, they found elements that tee into it all. And like I said, part of what I liked about, especially with that last one I was sharing, from the cover of, I think it's from Selena's Big Score, but it was the Cook's design was that it was normal clothes in a way that like were fitting for a cat burglar. And that's something I thought that I really appreciated about the design with it was because, like I said, I kind of dig the tactical look for some characters, and I think Catwoman is one of those.
Now watch, right? We finally get King off the books. Somebody else comes, right? They're going to actually try to put Bruce and Selena back together. So, as part of her redesign, she's going to have a veil to go with the whole wedding theme, and in a roundabout way, this translucent thing hanging from her back brings back the cape.
I love it.
I did want to we were talking about, costumes that are just clothes. And it reminded me of the fact that the Penguin is kind of an oddball because he is designed the way you would dress up to go to a fancy get together in the 30s and maybe in the 40s, the spats and the white, what do you call it? That white front piece that's really hard and flips up in the old cartoon.
It's shirt front.
The whole,
he's putting on the Ritz.
It's that whole ritzy look is so dated now that, but that's his whole idea, is that he is a dressy, he is dressed up to the nines and walking around fancily with an umbrella like you would a cane, except that nobody does this outside of movie musicals,
Yeah, there are certain characters that are able to basically either adopt a retro look or keep one throughout as they go. And I think there's some Batman villains that are like this. Some of the gangster Batman villains.
Well, and a lot of the same with Dick Tracy villains, right? Dick Tracy's in that weird Neverwind where it's always like 1936,
right?
So no matter what technology or added things they do in it, it's like everybody dresses in a zoot suit and nobody questions it because
everybody still wears hats. Yeah.
And that's one of those things about Batman. When I talk about Batman being able to be better utilized potentially in the 30s, a lot of that has to do with his basically look like Dick Tracy villains. Often even taken directly from some of them, like Two-Face. I discovered there was a Dick Tracy villain. I can't remember what he was called, but it was basically had the exact same naming convention. I was like, oh my gosh, you just stole from Dick Tracy.
All right, so if we're going to have this costume conversation, I have to bring up, I'm going to try to pull up some images here because I'm totally unprepared.
Well, yeah, I'm going to get rid of this because at this rate, we're never going to get to Marvel at all.
No, I don't know that we will.
Okay, I have to interject because there's a conversation I need to have. I need to air out.
Before we get that, one question we have from the chat is: does the Phantom costume work in your opinion? Yes. I assume you're talking about Lee Falk's Phantom.
Why wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's perfect.
And I'll say that it works in his original time period. I didn't care for like the 90s remake.
The 90s remake was still a period piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they did a cartoon that was like a Phantom 20. Basically,
that's what I remember.
And yes, the outfit still works. In fact, it works even better because he's got this sort of retro sci-fi look to him anyway. So he just fits in better.
Yeah. So what I was going to say when we were talking about period pieces and stuff before is I agree with Twitless, and I think a lot of these outfits still work outside of being done in the period. Just from a storytelling perspective, I prefer the period pieces. But I don't think they necessarily need to be updated.
That's an interesting point, actually.
As far as the Phantom costume, I have to say that I don't think it works because I can't imagine wearing that thing in the jungle. It just looks hot. It just looks very hot, and I don't know where he's getting all these nice fabrics from. And
that's his real superpower is being able to withstand the jungle in a full.
Yeah.
All right, I want credit for this. I introduced you to this guy, Twitless.
I saw this on Facebook earlier, and I just thought this because we're talking about costumes. There's Tintin with a bunch of other people that I thought would be fun. As far as finding all the fabrics for the costume, he's not contained to the jungle. He comes and goes.
Yeah, and I admit I haven't read a lot of Phantom at all. But the Phantom movie with Billy Zane, I did buy the costume as a costume. I had trouble seeing it in the jungle, but as soon as he is wearing it in the city, I'm fine with it. And whoever did the costuming on that movie did a very fine job, especially when it comes to Catherine Zeta-Jones. She comes down those steps in those thigh-high boots. I'm like, okay, I like her character. It's like she's a sky pirate. Okay, fine.
Oh, hey, can you go back one? Because this is interesting, actually. The Shadow is probably the earliest character I can think of who was wearing a cape. And that was long before the world's first actual superhero.
Well, not that long before. And Zorro.
Sorry, I shouldn't say long before. But
And Zorro had a cape before the shadow existed.
Ooh, you're right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that means that also you're looking at all your swashbuckling characters that weren't pirates.
However, let's stick with people in what you would refer to as a modern world where no one wears capes.
Let's do Zorro's set in the 1830s, something like that. So.
Yeah, but capes were still very popular in the opera at that time as well. So it's not like they were completely devoid. I'm also not surprised. Like, this would be believable that Tintin would be friends with all of these different guys.
Yeah.
Right. I know, right?
Right.
Thank you, Adam Murphy. You've given us some chuckles. So
Oh.
out there in the world.
Yeah,
That's
Popeye just fits in perfectly with Tintin.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I had the greatest idea the other day. And this is totally off the topic of costumes.
Thank you.
But one of the things I had the idea of is I'd love to get an illustration. Maybe I'll save up some pennies and see if Matt C will illustrate it. But having a tiki bar with Tintin, Corto Maltese, Popeye, some of those adventure comics characters seems like a given. Maybe I'll find some money and see if I can't con Matt C into drawing it for me. Who knows? Anyway, moving on. I'll unshare that. So, what I think of the 1998 Zorro film, I liked it.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Oh yeah, that was pretty good.
Yes.
The sequel was a little off.
Yeah. I don't know why.
It didn't need a sequel.
Right.
But
That's
the
probably
director of that did the he did the Green Lantern movie. And it's like, how can that be? He's so good in everything else he directed Zorro, and is like, that was fantastic. And he did the new James Bond when they restarted James Bond. He did that one. I was like, that's fantastic. And then he did Green Lantern. It's like, how can this be from the same person?
Two possibilities. One, he didn't really understand Green Lantern, or two, the producers wouldn't stay out of his way.
That's entirely
That's a huge problem at
I will
Warner
offer
specifically.
I'm going to offer one possibility. I'm sure it's not the only reason, but Ryan Reynolds has taken a long time, in my opinion, to figure out what kind of character he is good at playing. And a lot of the time, or at least how to do it, he is not particularly a good actor to act a serious character. And his portrayal of Green Lantern had him basically acting like a modern day Superman. And like, to me, that's a huge part of just listening to him say these cheesy lines.
He was just doing Van Wilder, though.
Yeah, like, you could say, and I'd probably agree, that he likely wasn't the best person to play Hal Jordan, but Ryan Reynolds was by far not the problem with that movie.
Mm-hmm.
It was honestly one of my biggest problems.
Everything was a problem with that movie.
Yeah, like there were some things where he's much lower rung on the ladder.
Like I said, it's not the only version. I'm just saying,
I did.
it was a factor.
Yes.
Hutch, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Yes, the writing was bad. The costuming was terrible. The entire visual, the artistic, I mean, the look of Oa was horrible. The way it's all dark and you can't make out anything. I couldn't make out any of the Green Lantern Corps members without like pausing it because it's so hard to make out anything. It was a terrible art design on that movie. So
And somebody is going to have to answer. I have literally spent.
I kind of like the look of the suits. Were kind of like the sort of like, because it was, they went with this blend of quasi organic but a little.
If they did it practically
neat.
with like fabrics and makeup effects and stuff, then it would probably look good. The way they decided to CG render the whole thing looked awful.
That was awesome.
yeah.
I'm just
And
saying, I'm just
nowadays,
saying
it's funny 'cause they do that all
the
over the
suits
place.
they were wearing. I think the suits they were wearing were okay.
I think that the only thing from that movie that I really liked was Jeremy Irons' voice acting. It's really good.
Well, here's another
did he
thing.
do?
If they
Jeremy Irons
need-
is always good.
Yeah.
What did he do?
have
What did he do in
villains
that?
it.
He was Sinestro, I think, wasn't he?
No,
That's-
No, Mark
that's
Strong was
That's
Sinestro.
Mark Strong. That's right.
Who is
Mark
Jeremy
Strong-
Irons?
Mark Strong.
I think I was just wrong.
Oh, okay.
Mark Strong puts the ring on. The one thing I remember is for no reason at all, Mark Strong puts as a stinger setup, but they've done nothing but they've not set it up at all. So he just puts it on, and I remember just sitting there going, "Why?" And it was like, well, the reason why is so we can set up the next movie. And it was just,
Right.
I hated that.
My wife said that. She doesn't know Green Lantern, and she's like, "Why would he do that?"
Yeah.
I'm like, "Yeah, you've done nothing to, unless you know who Sinestro is, you've done nothing to sell us on why he would choose to do that."
Yeah, it was dumb.
Yeah.
That was dumb.
Now, here's a question that I
Nick
have had.
Lively was pretty.
I watched it years and years ago, and never had the courage to check it out or ask anybody. Was that supposed to be MODOK?
No.
In
No.
what?
MODOK's
Oh.
a Marvel character.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
completely different.
Oh, you're
universes.
right. What am I thinking?
It was
Who the heck
Hector,
was that guy who ended up in the?
Hammond.
Hector Hammond.
Hector Hammond? Yeah.
No, he is who he's supposed to be.
Mhm,
Right.
mhm.
Okay.
Yeah,
He's
I
just-
don't
he's
even
a
read
lesser
Green Lantern,
known-
and I knew that.
He's a lesser known villain if you're not.
He's a great Green Lantern villain. Is a good one to use, and they just it's like as soon as they have him as the servant of the space cloud, which is just horrible. They should have never gone with having. See, the problem is it's two Jeff Johns.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, we're off on this. We can spend a whole show talking about what's
about
wrong with
Green
the Green
Lantern.
Lantern.
Okay, all right.
And we could
I
some
need
other
to-
time.
I need to interject with a comic book costume conversation. I think is really interesting to me personally, and it does touch on something we talked about earlier, which was super villains as opposed to superheroes.
What in the world? What's the matter?
Sorry, this is we said we have to stop. Black said, "Can we please stop talking?"
That says we have to talk. Stop. Okay, so I'm gonna
We'll have
open
a
it.
whole
I don't.
episode dedicated to it sometime.
Might be a
You
good
have
idea. Najee says no, keep
Najee says
going.
no, keep going.
That's funny.
No, Najee, we won't. We won't do it.
Chat's been hilarious. It's like half chat will say, they like something, the other half will say no. It's been great. Okay,
It's a blitzkrieg.
great. So, I want to talk about Doctor Doom because he is my favorite comic book character, like of all time, and I have very mixed feelings about his costuming, and it is very
Like in the comic book or in
everywhere.
the movie?
Everywhere.
Okay. Let's.
And I can like comics, film, video game, the whole ball of wax. And I pay very close attention to how Doctor Doom is being portrayed because I very quickly can ascertain whether I enjoy a look that he has or completely do not. And it is bizarre to me because, in my opinion, Doctor Doom is a skill bar. And let me explain what I mean by this. If
I
you
like the
can
fan tunic.
if you can artistically portray Doctor Doom and sell it, you're a good artist. It is like a bar that demonstrates how skilled you are at doing your job as a comic book artist, because the people who I think don't meet this bar fumble it and they make him look ridiculous and stupid and anachronistic to a fault. But the people who I think can meet this skill bar are able to work magic and sell the idea of Doctor Doom. And so let me explain kind of like what are the challenges are.
I like that.
With how to do Doctor Doom. Okay, so Doctor Doom is a character who has a pretty classic look. There's a certain continuum that you can kind of change, but there are certain elements that you have to keep or it's not him.
At least his colors have never changed.
That's one of them. He has to have a green hood at the very least. Cape, tunic, typically, not always. But those elements have to be there, have to have an armored look. In addition to this, you also have to sell this idea that he is simultaneously kind of medieval looking. Doctor Doom is a medieval looking character. No matter how you spin it, there's always going to be this medieval flavor that he's got. Man in the Iron Mask kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. However, you must simultaneously, while taking all of the above influences, like, medieval kind of cape and hood and tunic to a lesser extent, and the medieval kind of armored look, and you must simultaneously sell that character as looking like he is wearing the most technologically advanced suit known to like the Marvel universe. And you have to do both of these things simultaneously. And that's why I think that Doctor Doom is basically a skill bar, because a lot of people go, okay, well, I can draw a guy in medieval armor and like put a tunic on it, and he just looks like a Renaissance fair participant. And I've seen some terrible looking Doctor Doom portrayals that just make him look like I said, he's just a cosplayer. Meanwhile, there's this certain magic that certain artists are able to do, where they're able to sell this idea that he's wearing these classical elements. Well, at the same time, there's something about his armor that communicates, wow, that thing is advanced. There's something about it that's not just medieval. There's something technical to it. And those tend to be the designs I like the most. But there is kind of an interesting spread of what you can do with that character. But I think Doctor Doom is like I said, I think there's a skill bar with him, and I think he's a fascinating point of conversation. Because sometimes he looks gosh awful, and I hate it, and other times I just do chef's kiss and I love it. So I'm gonna pull up a few images, and
we're gonna play Do You Like It?
Maybe. So let me start with let me see. So let me do. Is Rhys back? Well, Metal can share.
I can. Also, I'm just probably going to say I'm historically have not liked any of his outfits that did not have the green tunic.
Okay, so let me show one that
there were any that. Oh, the tunic. Gotcha.
The tunic is like a must for me.
Let me show you one that overcompensates in the opposite direction. Okay, so this is one that completely overcompensates.
There's definitely some with the tunic that I don't like either.
So this is his ultimate design, where they said, "Hey, let's give him goat legs." So in
That's
this version,
what you were talking about.
So this is one of the many where it's like, this is ridiculous and retarded, and they're still keeping the green, cape and hooded idea, and ultimate. They were doing so many experiments with all of their characters. I hated this. They even brought it back. Okay, here's the interesting bit. The interesting bit is that Ultimate also has one of my favorite designs for Doctor Doom. Shockingly, let me pull this sucker up. And if
I'm sorry, do you mind me commenting on that last one, because I've never seen it before?
Oh, hit me! Yeah.
But that whole thing of him wearing a torn away ratty thing. I mean, he's supposed to be like sort of royalty and also an ambassador of his country, right? I mean, he wears fine clothes. He doesn't wear scraps.
So that version was basically part of like the origin story, essentially, before he's like establishing himself.
Okay.
I
mean, even I know that about him, and I'm not a Marvel reader.
That's another thing about Doom's costume, is that Doom is never actually in costume. Those are his normal clothes.
Yeah.
And, you'll see certain versions, like the first movie, for instance, had him as just a guy wearing a normal suit, and then only at the end does he go and put on a costume. Suddenly, he's doing the supervillain thing that he's never done in the comics.
See, I like this version. I like this one a lot.
This is also Ultimate Comics, the same run. This is Greg Land of all people.
I'm surprised, because I normally just hate Ultimate Marvel.
And they basically the goat legs, I think, were very poorly received, and they basically just said they just forgot it. And so like a dozen or so issues later, in the same run, they introduced this version, and it's one of my favorites. And it kind of like, it hits that skill bar, although because it's Greg Land, who knows what he's tracing here. But
well, you know what? For once, it's Greg Land, and you can't tell what the face is supposed to be. That's actually really helpful.
I don't care if you trace it if it works.
But this one actually sells the tunic idea pretty well. Partly because it's using lighting to hide it a little bit. Because when you just draw attention to the fact that he's wearing too much of a skirt, I've seen some versions where he just looks like that tunic is one of the hardest parts of, I think, the Doctor Doom skill bar to accomplish. Because if you're not a good artist, or if you're not, we'll just say good artist, if you're not hitting that bar, what ends up happening is Doctor Doom just looks like he's wearing a dumb looking skirt. And in that, I've seen some portrayals and they instantly turn me off.
because this one gives me like Viking Jarl vibes.
That would be the fur.
Well, between that and like how the belt and the tunic are handled, just like overall, it just gives me that, which kind of makes sense because his mecha suit kind of always almost had like gothic armor vibes to it as well.
Let's see, Von Doom, that would be Germanic. So yeah, it would make sense to get a little bit of Viking look in there.
So let me go with a maybe a slightly more controversial, not controversial, but this is the more
Also,
classic take. This
Von
is
Doom means from Doom, so Doom would be a place.
It's a state of
It's
being.
a state in Latvia.
I will not pretend I don't absolutely despise the name Doom.
Oh, I love it.
No, it's a state of being.
I mean, like
comes
he's from
Doom.
I'm pretty sure isn't the capital of area Doomstad. I mean, I think you can get away with it.
Yeah, but was it that before or after he took over?
It doesn't matter. He's the bloody time machine. It's just a time paradox.
The guy continually goes out of his way to convince the nations of the world that he's okay, and then he introduces himself as "I'm Doom."
I love
His
it.
name.
Yeah.
All right, so I got another. Here's a classic one, and this is the one where I feel like it's this is where I think we're on the edge for me personally, because this is where Doctor Doom's outfit starts looking a bit skirt-like, and that's where it starts to lose me. This is a good drawing, by the way. I'm not saying it's not a good drawing, but this is where, like, okay, are we doing the Doctor Doom looking just like I said, a Renaissance Fair reject? This one is, I think, borderline for me, but I think this helps establish this idea that I'm talking about, which I could totally wrong about it, but in my mind, like I said, I think there's this weird bar that this character introduces as a challenge to artists, because selling the idea of the character is a complicated affair, because he's a monarch, so he has to look kind of regal. He is smart, so he has to look intelligent. He is one of the most important villains in Marvel history. He has to look imposing. He's got the medieval aspect to him, so he has to look medieval. He is a wizard and he's a scientist. You have to put all of those things into a blender, and you have to come up with a design that doesn't look insane.
And again, it's not actually a costume; it's his day-to-day wear.
That is also a point. He's basically almost never out of this. This is just him. So you have to sell all of the above.
Never naked.
You have to sell all of this. It's just funny because I actually know of some instances where he is, but
I mean, I don't know if it's canon, but I know of at least one version where his mask was hiding his hideously deformed face. It's like
okay, so there's a whole, like, for the longest.
Like it's just a small scar, and he just complains that it's hideous.
That's what I've heard, is that he actually it's not like a hideous. It's like one scar or something.
Hold on. All right.
Yeah.
So
there's a whole lore to what.
There's a whole lore.
I don't think we have time to get into that, guys.
Okay.
I can address just a couple of the highlights. So a couple of the highlights are this. When he was first introduced, he was in fact hideously scarred. The origin of the character had him put on a molten hot mask over his face. So there ain't no way that was just a tiny scar. However, as the character evolved over time, there were people who actually kind of, because for the longest time, Dr. Doom's face was never seen. And this is actually some very clever moments in the Kirby run where, like, when Dr. Doom took his mask off, and they would, like, obscure his face with him holding something in front of his face. It was that kind of deal going on. And so there were people who, because there was an ambiguity regarding it, there were some people who kind of decided to interpret it that way. There were some writers who said, in my mind, Dr. Doom only had a teeny scar, and that it was just his vanity. And I like that take, but
I like that take too.
The original intention was he kind of got he messed that thing up, like unequivocally. Very, very early on, the whole thing was totally messed up. Okay, so
quick question from the chat: can Doom's armor be taken off?
Yes.
Okay.
He choose. It's more of a choice. It's not a life support.
If it's the
system.
90s.
It's a lifestyle choice.
Doesn't it smell horrible if he always has it on?
No, he's so scientifically advanced
that
he can
It's
He's got like
self-cleaning.
fresheners and stuff in there, like little spritz. It's like walking through the spritz at Six Flags, right? He gets his bath inside the suit.
Yeah, okay.
It uses radiation.
The early comics established that I think he would take parts of it off. Again, he was just never seen without it on. So it was the kind of thing where like he would take, I think, it off in private, and then because like I said, there's some early.
I assume he has to poop.
No, the suit takes care of that too.
Magic-
Can have a
magic that
bathroom
away.
inside his suit in Iron Man 2.
He's a
It's funny,
magician.
he's one of the few characters that actually is magic. So yeah, it gets taken care of.
yeah, one way or another. So the point I'm trying to make is that some of my favorite versions of Doctor Doom are actually ones that take the classic look and tweak it a bit, and don't just stick to the hardcore interpretate the typical traditional version of the character. They put a slight spin on it. There have been a couple of video game adaptations, I think, that have done a pretty good job. Let me try. I'll share one of these.
No, I just like the idea of like Reed Richards busting in, assuming that the problem was done by Doom when he had nothing to do with it in the middle of the night, and he like rips the blanket off, and underneath the blanket, Doom is just in full metal armor, wearing like a green nightcap and robe just to sleep.
Oh, and the teddy bear he got from Santa Claus.
Yeah.
No,
I assume that's a reference that I'm not getting, but that's okay.
Oh yeah, there was a whole comic about.
we're not talking about that.
It's okay.
Doctor Doom saved Christmas.
We're not
Okay.
talking about that.
Oh,
We're not talking about Santa Doom.
Go look it up.
So this is so like I said before, there's I've got pulled up a one of the more recent video game editions that they did with the character, and this is where they've taken, and some of this is just video gamification where they can just put in way more detail than most comic book artists would want to put in. I do like where you get this marriage of classic Doom. Like all the classics are there, including the tunic aspect of it.
I actually
There-
do like this.
Aspects of this I like. I don't think I like the whole thing of what I'm saying, but definitely parts.
So I tend to like designs that are doing this, where it's like, okay, all the classic nods are there, but we've done enough slightly different to again sell, because this basically sells the whole thing: magic, royal, technologically advanced, medieval. It blends all of that, I think, successfully in that blender, without making him look too much like, again, he's wearing just a too short of a kilt.
A lot of it has to do with the design of the tunic itself. All those seams make it look more like some authentic, piece of leather rather than just any random,
I think it's
party
actually
store.
the design of the tunic I don't like.
Really?
Yeah. Except the belts on the side. I actually like the leather straps. The leather straps I like. I don't like the different types of green and everything that's going across the tunic.
Because that sells me on the idea that someone has actually created this as a practical garment.
My shirts don't have different sections of gray.
Your
on
shirts
them.
aren't made out of leather.
That's true.
I had a leather vest that I wore for a long time.
Also,
it did have sections, but it was nowhere near like that.
So this is one that's a very good drawing. It's just the more I look at it, the more I notice the skirt. So this is again my trouble with Doom, because I love Dr. Doom and I love classic aspects of his character. It's just selling the skirt part.
So here's part of why I
hardest
think
part.
that the issue with the tunic aspect of it, and maybe this is just there, but like it should be like a coat of arms, right? And so it should have like a front piece and a back piece and not side pieces.
I think it's because he doesn't wear pants.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you didn't necessarily wear pants per se with armor back in the day.
Okay.
No,
So
but I'm
what
just
if
saying, like, the
you-
way the dress like tunic looks more
Right.
like a dress is because there's no pants underneath it.
Right, but I'm
At
saying
least
if it
even
was
like back, if you were
So
wearing
it-
just the
I
tunic,
think
you would
Rhys, is
see
this-
stockings or something.
Reese, is this kind of, because I got one pulled up again. I think this might be just fan art. These are the types of
Yeah, that works.
Yeah, not quite.
there are fan artists.
It looks like more like a shendit. But
There are fan artists who are able to put again little spins on it, where again it's like, okay, I could buy this, because it's not they're doing enough different to not to trick my brain into not thinking skirt. Um,
And I'm hearing what Rhys is setting down. In general, Doom might work better in a tabard than a tunic.
Yeah.
Well, here's an idea. What if you extended that tunic way down and just made it something like an overcoat?
A
They did-
dress.
they-
Nah.
hold on. They hold on.
No. Literally, have it the seam, have the buttons down it so that you can tell
If
it
Doom
closes around him.
if Doom is wearing a skirt, then Fred Flintstone is wearing a skirt.
Well, yeah. I mean, Fred Flintstone is wearing a dress. That's no. I mean, like
Straight up.
literally, like the difference between, because there's men's dresses and women's dresses and men's skirts and women's skirts, and a skirt is a non-bifurcated garment that covers the lower half of the body. A dress is a non-bifurcated garment that covers the whole body. Right. That's the actual like.
Or if we want to go older, he's wearing a shirt.
So like.
Right, but like the old word, what shirt means, like in Berserk, right? A cirque, he's just wearing a cirque. It's just one fabric that you would wear as the dress of your body.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
You would
And he is wearing armor, so he's not naked. I mean, he
They-
is wearing
they
the
did-
armor is his clothing.
That's another thing. That
To be
last image we were just looking at really tried to make that armor look like muscles, and the result was whenever I was looking at his arms, it was like, okay, all of a sudden he looks like he's trying to be a berserker or something, and I didn't care for that. So if you can make it look more like technology, you might have less of a problem.
Okay, so I've got examples for both of those. So I've got one for the jacket version. This is from Fantastic Four: World's Greatest Heroes.
I remember liking
this
this and how it has that Sherlock Holmes addition to the
Got
shoulders.
he's wearing an
I don't like
opera
this.
coat and no mask. That's not Doom.
Okay.
I don't like
no,
this.
no,
at all.
he would have the mask. though.
He has the mask. I wanted the full body shot. That's him in the.
There you go. Yeah.
That's him in the mask. I
still
wanted.
don't dig the opera coat for Doom.
Um,
Too late.
like I said, I was not the. There were. This was a hit and miss. There were parts of it I kind of liked. There were parts of it I nah.
Yeah, I think they're trying to lean more into the sorcery side here. He's even got almost like wizard sleeves, but I just don't like it.
No, this version is purely tech. There's like no
Purely
magic at all.
tech, and they're
Purely
going
tech.
with this design.
Purely tech.
They turned it into a coat, is what
ridiculous.
they did.
Yeah,
I don't think there's a single.
we're losing Hutch with all this.
I'm
discussion.
sorry. I'm tired. It's Marvel.
Especially with like the collar and the sleeves. Like,
I'm tired.
why
and it's
would you do this
Marvel.
if you weren't going to lean into the magic?
Sorry.
It's a good show. I actually do recommend it. We can wrap up the Doctor Doom conversation. It's just there is one more version I wanted to pull up, which is where they give him a tech skirt, where it's just the skirt part is just armor. And that version's okay.
A tech skirt.
A tech
So
skirt.
wow.
I must see this.
Yeah.
All right, you're gonna have to give me a second to find it then.
Okay, while you're doing that, I'm going to go
It's
ahead
from Armored
and share
Adventures.
this picture that I was for what Metal and I were talking about. Something that I
Well, what this does, it also brings up a thing about when superhero costumes are updated. There are often certain particular what?
Oh.
so
Yeah, I think
If
like
this-
he might work better in a tabard.
yeah. So if you've got the armor underneath that and this tabard, and it wouldn't look skirt like at all, and you could have the big belt on it and the whole business.
Right.
That's my.
And
take.
in some ways, it obviously
I
wasn't
always
the
need
tabard they were going
sleep,
for.
Colin. I don't sleep well.
But this
Yeah.
kind of reminds me of the '90s movie version.
And like a tabard works as a coat of arms. In fact, that's often why people wore it in battle.
That's
was to
why they
show
call
off
it.
the
That's why they
tunic.
call it coat of arms.
Well,
Because,
so on
like,
that note, what about a kilt?
not for Doom.
No, that doesn't really fit him.
No,
Mid-
because he's Von Doom. He's German. He's
Yeah,
not.
but
He's
still.
All
not.
right, I think I got
He's
it.
mainland European.
I just don't have a hang up about him wearing something that could be said to be a skirt just because it's got a belt around it, so the
Yeah.
of his shirt
Yeah.
goes down. If you
Oh yeah, no, I don't
You
have it
just don't
either.
wanna
I think it's
look
how it's
like
rendered
Link,
more
that's
than
all.
anything. Is the
I just
issue.
think I think this would look cooler than the
Right.
tunic with the belted
I
tunic.
think
That's all
it would
I'm
also give more of a regal look to it than a tunic would.
He's
Yeah.
not the hero of time.
I think this is the version I was thinking about. And they basically they just go. It's just an extension.
They
metal.
of the
made
armor
it
there.
into the armor.
They just made it the armor. I think Doom 2099 might do this as well. At some point.
Uh,
I don't
nope,
hate
don't
it,
like it.
but I
don't hate it, but
don't.
don't like it.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Yeah, I think they did this with Doom 2099 in certain versions as well.
I think of all the ones you've shown, the only one I really liked was the Jarl-looking one from the second Ultimate comic one.
Yeah. That was the best one.
Flyfox Pro is with me here.
Tag me when the Doom Convo ends.
All right, we'll stop. We'll bring that to an end. But hey! Apparently, we didn't even get to Marvel last time, so I brought some Marvel. Okay.
Well, and hey, I want to use Doom to bring up an interesting concept, because whenever you're doing this, you're updating superhero costumes, especially from modern times. There are a lot of your classic, what we'll call the classic superhero costume elements, such as eye masks, cowls, capes, trunks. I'm trying to think,
White eyes.
What's that?
White eyes.
No, that's kind of a cartoon thing, and that will last.
It's becoming more of a thing in comics now. I mean, in comic movies. I mean, like yeah,
that's true.
Batman's done it, and the
this is a stylistic effect, but it's not a type of garment.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry.
And so we'll
You're right.
find throughout history, when people have tried to update these things, there's a lot of things like that can end up finding a more modern counterpart to it. A cape becomes an overcoat. A mask becomes either goggles or like a pair of sunglasses. Let me see. A cowl becomes a hood. Right? There's a lot of little versions, and you can decide whether or not you like these or not. But I find it an interesting concept how there's almost a certain categorization of those classic details that we're always trying to look for a new modern version that does the same thing. Just an interesting thing I've noticed.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to be said for that. As far as that can be a really effective way of doing it, but I think that also is one of those things where it's I wouldn't say that would be an exclusion. Like, it's not a Batman costume without a proper cape. It's not a Superman costume without a proper cape.
Well, just like I was saying, some characters
being,
melded into their old version. Yeah, you would never put a trench coat on Superman. It just wouldn't work.
Right. And you wouldn't want to really put a trench coat on Batman either, unless you're doing like an alternate history kind of take. It wouldn't be Batman.
But it's funny. You can totally put a trench coat on Clark Kent.
Well, yes, I'm sure he owns one living on the the Eastern Seaboard.
Well, but also go back to the 1930s, and every reporter out there would have had a trench coat and fedora, right?
Well, yeah,
look,
yeah, everybody,
right?
Yeah,
and so of course that shows that even Clark Kent himself has a costume.
Yes. Okay, so now let's go ahead and see if we can't take a little bit of time here, because it's way past time. It's a long show.
I guess I'm gonna probably have to bounce in a couple minutes.
Okay, so let's have a couple of moments, if we can, to talk about some of our designs from our stuff that we have participated in, and see if we can't, kind of talk about what we liked about them, and maybe even get some feedback from everybody else on here, see what we think. So, who wants to go first?
Well, perhaps you, just so we can have an understanding of where you're going with the conversation.
Okay, let me load up some stuff here.
I almost feel like this is going to take another hour.
We could do a part 3.
We could do this. Yeah, we could save our thing with our characters for another show.
I suppose we could. Do we want to do another thing?
It's been 2 hours, and I'm tired. I feel like if I wait 5 minutes, I'll be grumpy.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Well, that's fair. That's fair.
I already did a 2-hour show today. I'm sorry.
Oh, that probably explains a chunk of.
I always do a 2-hour show on Wednesdays, and then I hurriedly make supper, and then I come and join this one. So
wow.
Well, thank you for.
We appreciate it. He streams. What are you doing right now? Let's change gears then. We'll not do a self-gratitude thing. What are you streaming these days?
Me?
Yes.
I actually am doing mystery games this week. I took a break from doing Zelda, and I wanted to change things up. So I did a mystery game Monday, which I did Among Us, the the one where it was really popular during lockdowns and COVID
Right.
lockdowns, and I was aware of it, but I kind of thought I'd give it a try. So I did that one Monday, and today I did a game called Cuphead, and I hated it so much. Within 15 minutes, I felt like it was going to give me heart problems, and
Oh, and that game only gets harder the further you get into.
I could not get past the first one. This thing
Yeah.
starts throwing stuff at me, and I'm like, I can't
It's
time
crazy.
this right. I can't. It's 15 minutes into that, I went back to Among Us for the rest of the show. But I will even tell you guys, since nobody from my show watches this show, Friday's game is going to be Mario versus Donkey Kong. So it's actually Mario fighting Donkey Kong, just like 1982 again. So I'm going to be a little kid on Friday. So
That's a good game.
so that's on Friday 4 to 6 p.m. and then next week I go back to Zelda for a while. But I kind of like the mystery game thing. So I don't know what's going on with my channel, but I used to have a very big following, and now I have like 3 people. And I don't
YouTube
know.
is changing everything again.
I think so. It's like is it
You're
not
trust
being
me, you're
shown
not the
to
only
anybody
one.
or what?
Check to see if what you want to look at is whether or not the traffic is coming from your current followers or if you're getting any new followers.
Yeah,
I believe you'll discover that's where the culprit is.
I'm seeing the same few people all the time, but I don't know what to do about it. So, yeah, it's and I tried uploading I tried to do different stuff, and I did a big reaction video. I edited it down tightly and I put it up, and they keep dinging it, and I'm like, I don't get how do other people do reaction videos, because they get away with it and they show a lot more, and I'm like, I don't allow 10 seconds to go by without like taking out a clip or pausing it or talking, and it just keeps getting dinged for copyright violation. It's like, it's all
Do you have anything
copyright.
negative to say about what you're
Oh, well, we're making fun of the Super Friends, but also I'm saying, hey, you should go watch this whole thing and go check it out on Max and go.
Are you streaming it?
No, we did I recorded it using StreamYard, and I edited it down, and I took this 40, because it's a full hour-long Super Friends episode. I've got it down to like a little chunk, and just the stuff that is necessary to get the story across. And I don't know what the deal is. How you there's other people who show huge tons of movies, and I don't know what the rules are, but it's really baffling. They won't tell you what you're doing wrong. They just say, nope, not right. They upload it again. They're like, nope.
They're
right.
actually introducing a new tool soon, where they actually are going to tell you. They're going to actually have,
nice.
And it's gonna have these little highlights, and it's gonna say at 5 minutes you violated this thing, and that's why we demonetized it, or at 10 minutes in, and it's gonna like basically color code it for you. So
that's what I need, because every time I uploaded it, it said we found Super Friends content in minute 14 to minute 17, and I'm like, it's all Super Friends content. but they only told me about that chunk. So when I fixed that chunk and uploaded again, then they find another chunk.
Did you try to dispute it though?
That sounds like bot stuff.
I did. It's
okay.
I tried to dispute it. I can actually. I think the only thing that can get it like reviewed by a human, because I don't know. I don't think a human is looking at it yet.
No,
for the most part they don't. But
right.
If it's under fair use, you can dispute a lot of stuff.
I think I have to, because it's mostly used as a source for a big discussion that's mostly just the two of us talking about the implications of the episode. But yeah, I need to have a human look at it. I don't know how to get a human to look at it. So I think I just have to do it. It's like, if it fails, then I get a copyright strike on my channel. So the only way to get a human to look at it is to really bite the bullet and run the risk that. And it's like, how can it be a copyright strike if you won't actually show it? It's like, you're saying, nope, you don't get to show it, but you get a copyright strike. And it's like, but the content isn't out there. How can it be? It's very weird. So that's what's going on with me.
Yeah, and you guys can check out Hutch's video game streams at the link in the chat.
Oh, thank you.
I dropped it in there, you lousy kids.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep. So, we are working behind the scenes at Ideal Comics, working on projects. I just had a conversation with Star, storyteller, and we are working on a I don't know. It's a fun comic. It'll be really great when it gets finished up. So, and of course, grab it on Sunday. If you are a Patreon, you can get a week early, the next strip a week early. But yeah, so that's what we got going on there. Done by the most the writing and art is done by the very talented Tullius and Rhys. And I'm doing colors and edits on it. But that's that. What are you up to these days, Twitless?
Still doing Super School, still making Omega Girl. I just finished lettering issue 5, and I'm going to do some our final review edit for it, and then we'll get some proof copies hopefully soon. I've got art coming in for issue 6. So
another thing I should point out that both Twitless and I were involved in is if you guys head down to your local comic shop, check out the Winnie the Pooh Demon Hunter by Nick Mueller. We were both editors on that project, and it's in comic shops, I think, starting next month. So
awesome.
Yeah. Pretty cool. So, a Metal. What have you been busy with?
What am I not up to? Well, surprisingly, I did just upload a page of X Dynamis Chaos this morning. So there's a fresh one on the site if people want to go to xdynamischaos.com and look at that. I kind of just... I've been too burnt to do further like editing and stuff, so I just kind of bit the bullet and finished a page of the webcomic instead of going back and refinishing all of the web novel chapters that I was working on. I still have like 5 of those left. And it's like, it's just been so long, I need to put something up. But I'm also working on a new story where I am just writing, so you don't have to worry about that taking forever. I'm not the artist on that one. That does take place in the X Dynamis Chaos universe with an artist that's going to be digital first, probably primarily on Global Comics, though I will probably also sell PDFs on my website if you want to just get them directly from there. That's going to be called the Dreamscape Dilemma, which will be fun. And obviously I'm running stuff over on the Vomitorium Live twice a week, and sometimes randomly I just stream video games in the morning if I'm done with whatever I was working on. And you can find that over there. I'll be doing a show tomorrow at 8 p.m. Central, primarily about video games, but if video games aren't your thing, I also talk about like movies and anime and comics and stuff on the Monday show at the same time, so there's an option. That's mostly it.
Sweet. Well, Cartoonicus,
Stay tuned.
We already talked about Super Schooled today. What else are you keeping yourself busy with that people might be interested in?
Well, just like last week, Mermaid is still in effect, so I'm just being crazy on Instagram here. I'll put that up. But also, I wouldn't mind it if I could try to get people to check out my Spreadshirt shop. That's always a thing.
Spreadshirt? What is that?
I got all kinds of different cartoony designs on there that can be printed on everything from T-shirts to coffee mugs to laptop covers, etc., etc.
Well, cool. But that's the wrong thing.
What's that?
Oh, I shared a. I put that back.
That's you're saying I put the wrong thing up.
No, I did the wrong thing. I went to copy it from the private chat and pasted it as a response to your post.
Oh, I see. That's what that is.
That's what that is. It's in the chat for the reels now. I got that there. So, well, that's the story. That's the show. Next week, we are either going to be talking about Superman or we're going to be sharing our thoughts on why we chose specific ideas for costumes in our stuff. We'll see what happens.
Before we go, can you show the... I'll share my screen. I'm showing you the thumbnails that I did. They all involve costume, the Riddler. This is the first one. What is the mystery game? Let's see, which one is the second one?
So he did start that costume. I never saw that when I was a kid.
Yeah. So there's that one. Whoops. Let's see. There's this one. That's John Aston.
Gosh.
How excited am I about Mystery Game 2? Because you can see his nipples.
Curly mustache.
It's so cool.
This costume is so much better than the leotard, and this goes back to our talk from last week. But I was doing mystery games. I'm like, who else do I use for my thumbnails but the Riddler? So this is the one for Friday. That's all. I just wanted to show that. Thank you.
That's great. That's great.
And it's
I
related to
always
the
appreciate John
conversation.
Indeed. Okay, well, we're going to call it there. That's the show. Check us out next week. We'll have something new to talk about. And until next time, get out there and read some comics.
Especially
You guys have a
ours.
good one. Especially ours.
Especially ours.
Some of them are even free. Good night, guys.
Good night.